Hey teachers, how happy do you feel right now? Now, March 21st was the United Nations International Day of Happiness, and it's a day that the UN coined, being the International Day of Happiness, in recognition of the important role that happiness plays into somebody's well-being. Now, the theme in 2021 was happier, kinder, together. And this was really an opportunity to recognize how challenging the last year has been on the happiness and overall well-being of everyone around the world because of what we're facing in the pandemic. Now, I find the idea of happiness really interesting, and it blends really similarly into some of the concepts around positivity and optimism that I've been talking about in some of my other videos. Now, I believe that everybody wants to be happy. I think that everybody desires happiness. Everybody tries to provide happiness to their family, and as teachers, we strive to create a happier environment for our students because we understand that because happiness is an important part of well-being, happier students do better, happier teachers do better, and just happier people do better. And yet, there's almost a sense of guilt, and especially in a time like we're in right now, where there's so much hardship, so many challenges being experienced by everybody, that we're almost in a position to feel guilty when we experience happiness. And when we don't feel happy, we almost feel guilty, or we feel shame for not having the ability to feel happiness, as if we're not being grateful or appreciative enough for the things that we have. So here's something that I want to offer you to maybe reframe this idea of happiness. I want you to try thinking of happiness not as a state that you're trying to achieve, not as an end goal, not as an X marked on some imaginary map. But I want you to think of happiness in the same way that you teach students literacy, in the same way you teach students numeracy, or in the same way that you teach students how to be physically literate. And that is, there's no end goal. There's no target that needs to be reached. There's never a point where you sit back and say, well, my student's done it, they are literate. There's no point when you say, wow, little Timmy is the perfect soccer player, I've done my job. All of these literacies that we strive for throughout the education curriculum are all journeys, and we think of them as continuous pathways that we take to always being better and continuously learning. And I want to challenge you to think of happiness just as another one of these literacies, something that we're always working towards each and every day. Some days we're better at it, some days we're not, and that's okay. But by thinking of it in this way, we remove some of the pressure from ourselves, from how we feel in that moment, because we understand that happiness is something that we're constantly working towards, no matter how we feel in that moment. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. Now, as teachers, I expect that you probably have these things right next to you. If not, feel free to pause this video and go grab those things. And then here's what you're going to do. You're going to write down on your piece of paper a little bit of a T chart. And on this chart, on one hand side at the top, you're going to write more happy. And on the other side, I want you to write less happy. Now, I want you to reflect on your last day of work. And in the column that says more happy, I want you to write down all of the things that happened in your day that made you feel happier. Whether a little bit or a lot happier, make a note of all of those things. And then on the other side, I want you to write down those things that maybe made you feel less happy. Now, when we look at the column of the things that made us feel more happy, I want you to notice and reflect on those things. And I want you to start to consider how you might be able to introduce more of those activities into your day of work. And on the other column, I want you to think about how it is that we can minimize the impact that those items had on us. And something to remember is this. I know that we can't erase all of the things that make us less happy. Things like report cards, assessments, parent-teacher conferences, these things that might not be our favorite part of teaching. We can't get rid of all of them. But I want you to really reflect on how you can minimize the negative aspects of how that makes us feel so that they don't become as big of a drain on our happiness. And here's the most important part. Whether it's the things on the more happiness side of the ledger or the things on the less happy side of the ledger, I want you to make sure that you are not feeling guilty, that you're not feeling shame of the things that bring you happiness or the things that take happiness from you. This list is unique to you. This is how you feel, and how you feel is never incorrect. But by reflecting and maximizing the things in our work that bring us the most joy, the most happiness, and by really reflecting on rephrasing or maybe repurposing those items in our day that don't bring us as much happiness and joy, that's how you're going to be able to really capitalize on every single day in this journey being a little bit happier and a little bit happier, and most importantly, getting to demonstrate for our students that this is a journey, and that just because we're not happy every day doesn't mean that we're not on this pursuit of a little bit